Thank you for joining us wherever you are. This podcast episode is brought to you by the Old Ways Actual Play team. This actual play uses the Coriolis rules by Free League Publishing. This actual play is performed by adults and contains adult themes. Strong language, powerful factions, and adventures across the third horizon await. All content, including names, places, events, companies, and etc., which may bear resemblance to entities living or dead, is strictly coincidental. My name is Michael Diamond, and for tonight's game, I will be your storyteller. Thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Old Ways podcast. I am normally your keeper, your storyteller, or your handler, Michael Diamond, but I am sitting now in the storyteller role with our Coriolis Prelude, our final one for Children of the Periphery, and I have a very special player with me tonight. And so I will let them introduce themselves and who they're playing.
Hello, I am Rosie of Odd Duck Dice, and tonight I am playing Icarus, who is the pilot of our crew.
Fantastic. And so if you would, Rosie, tell us a little bit about Icarus so the listeners can get to know them.
Sure. Icarus, when she's standing or anywhere that isn't behind a flight control, she sort of is a little bit hunched. She's trying not to take up space. She's a little nervous, doesn't want to draw attention. That changes as soon as she gets behind a set of controls. However, she's able to suddenly fixate on that and is a whole lot more comfortable. She might move a little bit more like a bird, someone that's looking for a way out, somewhere to take flight. So that's the way she moves. She tends to wear a flight suit that has a lot of weird, randomly patterned pockets that have been sort of stitched on and around her outfit as she's realized, I need more pockets. And so there's a lot of random colors and patterns around her. She wears jewel tones as far as her makeup goes. Her hair is short and ruffled, swept back from her face, mostly in the manner that she's just constantly trying to push it back out of the way as opposed to any kind of real style. Does that sound like a reasonable picture?
Yeah, I think so. I think it gives us a good idea, a starting point for Icarus. So why don't you give us an idea of where Icarus lives, where present day Icarus stays at?
So Icarus is from Kua. She grew up in the sort of lower tier of the city. Kua, as I imagine it, is hierarchical in a variety of ways. As you go higher, you get to the people who can actually afford to see the sky and maybe live in the monolith. And everything else sort of sprawls outward organically from the monolith. So there's thicker habitation of humans the farther from the base of the monolith you go, just because that's how any fungus grows.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually the concrete chews into the jungle, and then you have a whole other set of issues. So Icarus was born in that lower tier. She's definitely lost friends to monsoons because it's Kua. It's a rainforest. There's a city, a monolith in the middle of a rainforest. It's a huge juxtaposition. And just like in any rainforest, the closer to the ground you are, the more predators there are. So you want to try to move up. You want to try to get up into that canopy. However, the canopy of Kua is glass and shiny and not so much like the canopy of the rainforest on the planet. Icarus was born in the bottom layer. She's thus moved up to sort of more like the lower mid area where there might be some more shops and it's less slum-like.
I think that's reasonable. There's a lot of places in and around the monolith and sort of I would say the spread pattern that exists to support that enormous structure. There's an awful lot of different neighborhoods. Some are likely better than others, as you've described. And then clearly, as you get closer to the base of the monolith, the more and more halves there are versus the have-nots, which sit likely at the outer rim near the jungle where the massive creatures can come and eat them, where people die in floods, as you've mentioned, from the monsoon season.
Maybe a bit of an idea of how Icarus grew up. Her father literally ran the junkyard. So the junkyard were just like things that fell down from the people that lived higher up. Their weird little type of fruit, and then was swept out by wind or weather, rain towards that outer edge. Her family collected all of that because there's a lot of salvage. And that is where Icarus started building things and realized that it's kind of fun to cobble shit together and see what'll fly.
Yeah, I can imagine some of Icarus's first flying experiences were likely because of things they'd built and tested.
Oh, yes. But she got better at it. And that has allowed her the lifestyle that she could live higher up in the sort of man-made canopy, but she lives in the lower mid. So there's shops, they're more respectable folk, people have jobs, but she makes a point of living somewhere where she is on more of the outer edge and can hop into a transport of some sort and just frickin' go. That's her main prerogative, not being closer to the monolith, being able to get out quickly if she has to. Because she's a criminal, a getaway driver.
And criminal's a strong word, but it might fit. Maybe perhaps she's interested in seeing how flexible the laws here on Kua are.
And that, again, definitely depends on where you are in the superstructure of the city.
Certainly. So speaking of that, we'll say that for the past few days, you have been doing your best to lay low. And the reason for that is multifaceted. One of them being that you have had a string of essentially salvage jobs. Some of these salvage jobs have been fairly simple. Some of them have been not complex, but we'll just say they've taken a lot of energy to get what you need out of them. They've been cumbersome when it comes to the amount of time needed to complete them. But that's really because you're sort of not on the lam, so to speak, but you are recovering, which is the nice way to put it, from dealing with something that was very high risk, that got you several hundred burr in your pocket and put you in line for perhaps the next series of jobs. The curious part you have come to in the past few hours is that your anchor point, the person whom you have done so much work with over the past several years, Dante, has been a little incommunicado. Now, he told you about a day and a half ago or so that he was going to have to go and collect something. Normally, he would have told you all about it, but he confessed that he was sworn to secrecy about what he was picking up, and that the job specifically stated that he had to go alone. And even though he knows that sounds weird and you're probably worried, he is going to be back. It's been probably plus 2 hours since he was supposed to check in. And so fear tap dances along the back of your spine a few times because he's really never out of communication when it comes to these sort of things. He understands the cohesiveness that the two of you have to get things done. And one of them is communicating. And if there's one thing Dante's fairly good at, it's communicating in a timely manner. So much to your surprise, you jolt up a bit in the chair when your comlink rings, the one you've been staring at for the past hour and a half, waiting, forcing, willing it to ring. It finally does.
She clicks it on to answer and says, "Hello?"
Hey, you hear Dante's voice, strained. He sounds a little out of breath. I'm a few blocks away from you right now. I'm dealing with that thing that I talked to you about. Do you have like a few minutes? Maybe you could give me a hand?
Always.
All right, I'll tag the location. Scrub it when you get it. It doesn't exist, but get here quick.
See ya.
The line goes dead. So the pin that he basically drops in this electronic tag form for you is, it's about 4 or 5 blocks away. It's a series of salvage garages that you are fairly familiar with. A lot of folks come here. They're rented by the hour or by the day, and basically they're berths for you to dock whatever you need to part out, strip it for everything that it's worth, and then move along.
All right. She goes, and given what Dante had told her, she's assuming that this is a job more directly from his uncle, Sayako, who is the real money behind Dante, the real influence. She's assuming that if Dante didn't tell her what's going on, it's probably because he didn't know. And the only job he would take of that nature would be from his uncle. So she's definitely going at a fair clip wherever he needs her to be. She doesn't trust that bastard.
It doesn't take you terribly long to get there, but you do it in a discreet fashion anyway. This is mostly because there's no reason for you to bolt out from the place that you're at and draw a shitload of attention to you. So you stick to, we'll just say, the angles and shadows that are available to you. It's roughly probably 2 or 3 hours past nightfall. So the available streetlights are on. Some of the canopy walkways have little diffused lights underneath them, and there's a slight haze from the jungle in the air right now. There's no precipitation at this point, but you know that monsoon season is coming, and so some of this is going to, at some point, become an utter fucking downpour. The series of garages that are there, berths as they were, are pretty straightforward. There's 5 of them in a direct line that make up one side of this building. So the building itself is set back into the overhang. So when you walk up to it, there's probably a 2 or 3 meter overhang, and then there are these massive doors with a tiny little man door next to each one. Each one could probably fit a 30 or so meter long vessel, or what you might call like a junker ship, which is basically any sort of vehicle, whether it be grav-assisted or wheels, that hauls a bunch of stuff, and so you can part it out properly in this space. The pin that got dropped from Dante indicates that he's in the middle. He's in number 3, and it looks like the door there is slightly ajar, that man door.
She walks up. She doesn't knock. She doesn't want to draw attention to the fact that she's going in. He should be looking for her anyway. She slips inside. What does she see?
Inside this space, it feels like a tomb in here, in the sense that it's large, dark, and echoey. In the center, there is an object that sort of dominates this space. It dominates it because it's really the only thing in the space that's large. It's about, I'd say, 4 or so meters long, so maybe about 12 feet, give or take. It's about 3 feet wide, and it's covered by an enormous blanket or tarp. At the side wall, furthest away from you, there is a bench which has some tools at it, and then it looks like there's as best can be described, a couch. Now, this is probably more for people to just sit, or for longer stays, someone could stretch out on the couch. And that's where you see Dante with a small light above his head, and he seems to be reading something. He's also tucked his right arm hard in against his body, and he looks a little pale.
Hey-yo, you holding your guts in there?
Maybe a little. He coughs.
Should I get someone for you?
I mean, maybe you could take a look at it. I know you know a little bit of something about that.
Yeah, okay.
So when he, and I'm going to stress the adjective here, peels his arm away from his side, you can hear the sticky fluid that sat between his forearm near his elbow and his side. He is red from something near, basically right under his rib cage, and it's a hole that's probably, I'd say, about $50 sized around. He got hit with something.
Allah, why? What did you? Fuck. And she starts looking around for some kind of med kit, at least a stapler.
Yeah, so you take a look around and you find at this wide mechanics bench what can really only be described as a mechanic's first aid kit. So there are some pretty simple tools There's likely some adhesive, maybe some glue. There might be duct tape in there.
Yeah, something like duct tape. If there's something that she might be able to use as a really rough cleaner or like alcohol or whatever.
Yeah, you don't find cleaner in there, but you do see that there's likely some type of bottle of alcohol that sits on the back table. Not the isopropyl version, obviously. This is some sort of brown liquor that's been left behind. No idea of the type or the date, but with a quick whiff, there's definitely something in it that will kill germs.
Lovely. She swings herself back around and grabs that brown bottle, hands it to Dante and says, "You might want a sip of this before I do anything."
Sure. He coughs again, and you can see that there's a redness at his mouth. We were coming out of the meet. We were coming out to pick this thing up, and my uncle hired some guys to act as protection in case stuff went bad.
That clearly worked.
Oh, yeah, no, it worked real well. He takes a swig of the bottle, and you can see the pain etch itself across his face. His brow furrows. It wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. We got attacked out of nowhere, and these guys that shot at us were good. Some of the best I've ever seen. It took out 2 or 3 of the guys before we could get that thing. He points across the room until we could get it. I get my hands on it. And I'm no fancy pilot like you are, but I just jumped on and held on for my life. And I came here as fast as I could. And before I knew it, my side started aching, and I realized that I'd been hit by one of whatever they were firing.
Okay. She doesn't look over at whatever he gestured at that they were picking up. It's not going anywhere. They're the ones that took it anyway. My first roll of the game. What do you want me to do?
Well, your first roll of the game is going to be a metacurgy roll. So that is going to be your wit plus metacurgy. That is the first aid skill of Coriolis. And it will give you an idea of a couple of things. Now, when we roll dice in Coriolis, we're looking, as in most Year Zero systems by Free League, we're looking for 6s. Those are the only successes we can get. You need 1 material success at least to make the roll successful.
2 successes.
You have the ability with that success. So I will just say that it's a standard success. So there's limited, standard, and then criticals. And then obviously there are failures as well. You don't fail the roll. It's a success. You diagnose a couple of things about his condition. He's been hit by something that you've seen a couple of times, and the weapon itself uses a very specific type of ammunition. So these are basically sticky rounds. And so when they hit the body, they adhere to whatever layer of fabric. They don't penetrate deep. What they do is they burn off after they hit. So there's almost this phosphorescent quality or phosphorus quality to the round. So it's not that the wound is super deep. It's that a bunch of the meat and flesh at the top layer has been not just burned, but impacted as well.
Well, there, Dante, you got stuck by a sticky round there. And then she very unceremoniously splashes some of the liquor on the wound.
Oh!
You deserve that. You should have had me with you.
Oh, man.
I'll do it again.
He looks up, clutches at his side, of course, which is going to foul all of the work that you've done.
Oh, I need to do it again. Oh. Hands on your head.
He groans. You see him very slowly raise his arms, mostly his left arm. His right arm it's very difficult for him to move up.
Okay, just keep him away from it until I'm done trying to patch you up.
I'm going to give you a wits observation roll.
Okay. 1 success.
1 material success is all you need. So as you get in and begin sealing up the wound, one of the things that you notice is on the outside really of his lightly armored jacket carries a very strange film on it. Maybe it's something that got burned off by the round, but there's almost a residue that's been left behind.
Could it be used for like a tracking purpose of any sort?
It's possible. So there are some rounds that are used that aren't used to kill at all, but they're really used to paint a target. It's possible, if that's the case, that, I mean, you might be lucky that the garage is here because maybe it's going to interfere with some of the signal, but unfortunately, your mind leads you down another path. So the Legion, who are some of the best Zenithian mercenaries there are, tend to use some of the similar weaponry that you're starting to see the effects of. And the problem with that is that if the Legion is involved, you know, it's bad news. It's bad news for everybody. And frankly, Dante's uncle should have known better.
Who the fuck do you think is gonna buy whatever you're moving if you're fucking with the Legion? And she splashes another bit on it and says, don't touch it.
He groans and reflexively tries to keep his hands in the air.
Because that's who uses this shit, Dante. You know, did you know your uncle was putting you up to that? He's an asshole.
Listen, I'm working real hard to try to get out of here. Anywhere but here. I'm tired of doing these jobs that only get us so far. They only pay the bills for a few cycles, and then we're back out on the street trying to hustle, steal, or do whatever we can to get further. I was going to go to Nat's that night. She had a line on something, but it didn't work out. And so I ended up the only place I could go after that, which was my uncle. But that, he points across the way, is worth it if we can get it to the right buyer.
Once she's satisfied that she's got him patched up enough that he's not going to bleed out in her presence, she hands him the bottle so he can have another drink if he so desires, and turns around to take a look at whatever he thought was so important.
So it's currently blanketed, but once you relieve it of its covering, you see I would just say a state-of-the-art piece of equipment.
Okay, well, that's sexy. Very nice.
It's a grav bike. So it is long, sort of almond-shaped. It has a full sensor package just over the handlebars and brakes. It has what looks like a custom engine, and there are even angled plates on the front and the back to protect from enemy fire. It's probably 60 to 80,000 burr.
Who did you steal this from? And why the fuck didn't you let me drive it?
He stands up and steadies himself on the nearby workbench. I was trying to make sure you didn't get involved in this one because clearly it was high risk. There was a transport that was going through and they were moving stuff for the consortium. And I knew through my uncle, he said that there was a chance to nick one of these bikes and really pull some cash. The idea was that there was going to be a distraction, and there was, and we went after the bike. And there was 3 of us, and by the time I got to the bike, there was 1 of us. Because whoever was guarding these bikes started picking people off.
Yeah, if they're moving this, they're going to have damn good equipment.
Yeah, I know. I trusted my uncle had the right men in place, that he said everything was going to be gravy.
She does whatever the equivalent of flipping him the bird is.
Yeah, he gives you a look like a wounded dog.
Voila, you shouldn't have... How are you this stupid? How are you this stupid?
I got to get out of here. I can't keep doing this.
You can't get out of here if you're dead. She's got her lighter out, and it doesn't have fuel in it. It's a nervous tick. It's definitely something that Dante would recognize as indication of her mood.
I know a place where we can move this. We can get someone to buy in on it. I just need you to take me there.
You already have a buyer?
I have somebody lined up.
If you're lying to me, I'm going to be mad at you.
I'm not lying to you. I just needed to square this away. I needed to rest up until I had strength to move the bike down to acres. So acres for Icarus is a fence that she and Dante have used countless times. The only concern you have with acres is money comes and money goes. And so there's no telling whether or not acres has the burr to pay to fence this. It's not a bad option, but it's not great.
Okay, so acres might take it, but we can't take credit on this. And yes, I mean we. My ass is here too now.
Yeah. No, we need the burr, obviously. I'm going to have to figure out who to bribe to pay off the Legion from keep coming after me, because clearly that's a problem now. I see all that now, but it's got to be worth 60, 70, 80,000 burr. There's got to be enough in that bike to get us up a couple levels. I don't know, closer to not feeling like I'm on just another slum.
Closer to where your uncle likes to hang his hat.
Listen, the drinks up there taste better. The food isn't completely manufactured from God knows what.
You could eat the bugs. There's nothing wrong with eating a centipede.
They crawl on the way down, though. It's really...
It's healthy. If your food's running from you, you're doing something right.
Yeah, well, the only thing I'm running from now is the Legion.
Fair. You do look a lot like prey, Dante.
So you're going to take me down to acres or what?
How do you want to move the bike?
We got two options. There's a grab sled that we can use to pick the bike up, and we can take it under, some tarps or whatever, and we can slowly move it down there. That's option one. Option two is a little more exciting. We prove that the bike does what it looks like it does, and we get to acres 5 times as fast.
She closes the lighter, tucks it in her pocket, and is biting her lip, and clearly is excited by the idea of getting on that bike. If there's like a wheel roll or something, she wants that, but she knows it's stupid because that's going to attract attention, especially with her flying it.
I might leave it to like empathy command, as to say, does Icarus have command over her own emotions to not want to take the fast route?
Oh, she didn't get any successes on that, so we're getting on that bike.
Yep, you're getting on that bike.
And she gets on it almost Riker style, like, how he takes his leg and just sort of swings it over and settles down into the chair, except, she's facing the correct way, and wraps her hands very carefully around the steering mechanism and sort of lets out a
Okay. You go through the initial startup sequence powering the bike on. So you're not completely unfamiliar with grab bikes. There's a lot of races and a lot of street gangs use them. This is something on a different level, though. So normally there is a light to heavy thumping that goes on when you first start them up, because once the system engages, it has to push away from the earth. There's no sound. The bike rises like a ghost.
Dante, you should have let me come with you.
He very carefully hoists himself onto the back of the bike. There really isn't a second seat. There's more of like an elongated single seat. And so he has to sort of sit back there. There does appear to be like a grab handle on the left side, which is fortunate for Dante, as he's not too terribly strong there with his right hand at this point.
Just hold on to me. I'm stuck on this thing now.
Yeah, this works, right? Look at this thing. Look at the gauges.
It's pretty. It is prettier than any slice of sky. But Dante, you can't enjoy that if you're dead.
No, but you can enjoy it.
Oh, I'm going to. And she does the equivalent of like a rev and does whatever needs doing to get the door open. Says, hold on tight. We're shooting.
Yeah, you hear the clanking of the garage door slowly rising into the air. When you rev the bike, you get all sorts of immediate response and indicators of where fuel levels are and where the tachometer and revs are. And you get a almost like a forward mapping from sonar. So when the bike revs and the revs go up to check the engine, the bike seems to send out a signal. And right above the handles, above the gauges, there's a small, maybe 6-inch wide screen that displays the skeletal structure of the objects around you.
Looking from my position, and she's kicking herself for not checking before she got herself all settled and opened the door. She's hoping, really, when she asks Dante, you checked this for trackers already, right?
Yeah, I gave it a good once over, absolutely. The bike's been powered down since it got in here.
Okay. Hold on for what's left of your life.
He holds on.
And she's off.
So with a immediate and powerful movement, the bike exits from the garage. You hook right, quick, and the controls are ultra responsive, super smooth. You have to, as you make those first few adjustments, moving the bike back and forth, leaning left or leaning right to weave your way through the evening traffic. You have to adjust your conception and your concept of how agile this bike is. The bike watches out for you in certain circumstances. So it will assist and move vertically and horizontally as necessary.
She hugs as close to walls as she can. She is loving this thing. It's like her soulmate.
It's definitely something that you are pleased to drive. I think you should make a piloting roll. That would be fun. So agility pilot, and we'll see how well you do.
1, 2, 3.
Okay. So on 3 successes, you will make a critical success. So here's how that will appear. It isn't a matter of when or if for you. It is a matter of thought. You and the bike on this drive to Acres become one. You weave off streets and into alleys using the additional cover to protect yourself from prying eyes and hopefully anyone who's still pursuing this bike. You hammer the throttle all the way down one of the longest alleys here in this neighborhood, and the bike does not skip a beat. It feels like an extension of your will by the time that you are pulling up to Acres at the end of this neighborhood, sort of on the outskirts of it. And I'll just say that there's likely a slight pang of emotion because now you're here.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to get off this bike.
I have to get off. She makes an almost sort of cooing sound to it as she releases her hands from the steering mechanism and gives it like a almost like gentle pet. It's like, baby, at least we had that run.
So Acres, for your benefit, is an older man, white hair, heavily tanned skin from many, many years working out in the sun and the heat of the jungle. He wears a white and blue, almost sky blue tunic that is with vertical stripes. He wears a thick, wide belt with all sorts of different technological baubles attached to it. He's probably not adorned very much with jewelry by any means. He also wears a pistol because in his line of work, he says it's always nice to have backup. But at the approach of the bike, all sorts of different lights outside of his establishment, his shop, turn on. You see Dante's arm sort of come around your left side, and he clicks some sort of remote button or a tag or something like that. And the gate that leads to the back of Acres' shop opens up.
Heyo, kill the lights, Acres.
You see him come out and he acknowledges you, and then he makes a hand gesture and the lights turn off and you see the gate slowly crank shut. Where in all the heavens did you get one of these?
Icarus steps back to let Dante do the talking.
Dante looks at Acres. It's kind of a long story, but she's a beauty, right? Runs his hand over the front armor plating. That's the best way you could say it. It has, at the front of it, it has a raptor, almost a raptor beak point, which is what helps it cut through the air so well. And there are these big fins that make up the front of that raptor's face that are what you can kneel behind to get behind the armor. And you can see from your vantage point, Icarus, that armor it's got to be nano armor. It's got to be these very, very fused, very, very tiny fused plates that are all interlocked with one another. The armor alone is probably a 5,000 or 8,000 burr upgrade to this thing.
She pets it again. Just like, so pretty. I'm going to stand over there. Otherwise, I'll never let you take it.
Icarus scratches his head.
You are taking it, right? You're taking it.
Hey, hang on here. Let me look at this. He steps over to the bike while it's still sort of silently floating. He looks at the front and then looks right down the middle of the bike. It's a ghost. It's the Legion bike. Where did you get it? Why?
Looks at Dante.
Dante sort of half shrugs a little bit. I say half because his right arm doesn't move very well. Well, let's just say I acquired it a little while ago, and now I want to, get rid of it because clearly I don't ride a bike. He sort of smirks. Icarus shakes his head. It's going to take a little while to move something like this. Buyers for a ghost are going to be, they're going to require a certain touch. He smirks.
Icarus is pissed because this means Dante lied to her about having a buyer lined up. He definitely knows it. She's not great at hiding that stuff.
Dante furrows his brow and he looks over back at Icarus. Well, hang on, wait a minute. Last month you said you could fence anything. You said that it doesn't matter, high price, low price, whatever I bring. You'd be here for it. And Icarus sort of raises his hand and steps a little closer, and he says, do I smell blood? What happened? How did you get this? And Dante sort of shrugs and he says, listen, my uncle, he dropped me some information and, some people got together and we acquired it. Listen, that's, how this is. The Legion casts this stuff off all the time. Help us out. Help us get this bike into somebody who can appreciate it. As you have seen him many times before, you see Dante begin to socially grab at straws. And Icarus, with his hands just slightly more up in the air, and he says, I can find a buyer for it, but I can't buy it from you. Do you understand? Does that make sense?
Oh, I understand. And Dante had better understand, because that means Dante's a liar.
Dante lets out a very long exhale. I was going on the information that I had at the time. What he told me. He begins pleading with you. This is the one. This is the brass ring. This is it.
Okay, you know what? I don't want any of this. You can keep it all. Whatever. We just need to move this fast. We just need to get out of this. I don't fucking care what we get for it. Which is a shame.
Dante hangs his head, and the entirety of Acre's back area is suddenly bathed in light. And you see spotlights start coming on from overhead, and you hear rotorcraft in the air.
Shit.
A moment passes between you and this bike, and you consider the possibilities. Dante looks at Acres and tries to say something, and then suddenly your ears are filled with a wave of sonic, almost this crescendo of energy. It's a huge horn blast. And right outside Acres Gate, a MPV, a personnel carrier, drives up, crashes into the gate.
Icarus already has her hands up and she's pressing them against a wall. She does not want to look like a threat. She drove the thing, but she didn't steal it.
That's very true. Acres turns to the vehicle and begins to protest this damage of his property. Dante flits between seeing what you're doing and looking at the bike. He doesn't move.
Fuck you. She snaps at Dante and she's back on that bike and revving it and getting ready to make her run.
Okay. You get back on the bike and turn it back on. As you swing the bike back towards the only exit, you can see that this personnel carrier has deployed several heavily armored men who carry rifles. And atop their Space Marine suits are these very well-painted black helmets from the Legion.
Jala, you fucking dogs, let's go!
Dante jumps on the back.
We're gonna die, but it's gonna be fun.
If you were going... So I'll give it to you, Rosie. Tell me what Icarus is going to do. What's her plan?
She's gonna fucking gun it and try to get out underneath that craft and go straight fucking down to the ground if she can and go along that. Because she knows that way better than they do. If they can even get their goddamn ship down there. It's too big.
Fair enough. Go ahead and give me a piloting roll. Essentially, I'm going to step the difficulty up, and I'm going to say that it's 2 successes at least required. So we're doing something a little bit more complex.
4!
So you take the bike from 0 to 100. It's simple and easy and thrilling. Dante hangs on to your waist as best he can as the auto fire begins from the rotorcraft overhead. Tiny little droplets of rounds begin getting soaked up by the bike's available armor. And you peel through the personnel carrier and the troops that are there, moving simply far too fast for the Legion Marines to turn and acquire you as a target. Although you do hear several hundred rounds go off, so they are shooting to kill, it seems.
They might hear the echoes of some kind of undulating Xena-esque war cry as she shoots past.
Yes, you give a hearty whoop through the air, and you are firing back down the alleys.
Don't know where I'm going, though.
No, you do not. So I'm going to make a roll here for the rotocraft, which surprisingly can almost keep up with that bike.
I might be in the wrong line of business.
You might be. You're now a wanted criminal. Again, these things happen. So you fire back down that alley, and you begin weaving through the tightly created residential streets and spaces. You get probably half a click away from Acres, and you can still see that rotocraft overhead. The display on the Ghost begins to light up. Like you can see the screen flip and change. And it seems that someone's trying to take remote control of the bike.
Oh, no, you fucking don't. No, you fucking don't. Don't take it. It's mine.
So I'm willing to give you a wits data gen roll.
Okay.
So for you, that'll just be wits because you don't have data gen, to attempt to essentially force the bike into your control.
That's 1 success.
You give it a really good try. You fight back and forth as you're continuing to keep the bike at speed. You're fighting this thing off through the messaging prompts. By the probably 10 to maybe 30 seconds into this, you begin to realize that you're not going to be able to fend them off.
Dante, it's our skins or the bike. Which one do you want?
I want to live. I want to live. Of course. I mean, the bike is great, but I don't want to die.
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to barrel roll it, and we're going to fall off when we reach the bottom of that roll. I'm going to count to 3.
Okay, count it out.
1, 2, 3.
So this will be a piloting roll, a fairly difficult one. But I'm going to give you an extra die because I'm enjoying this, and the bike clearly would assist you with whatever roll you would need.
It senses the swing of her gravity or something.
It does. It's your connection with the bike. It's grown.
Oh, I love you. I love you so much. I'm going to miss you. So that's 2 successes.
Okay, so that is a limited success. So a limited success means some of it works and some of it doesn't. So I'll hand you the complication at this point. You and Dante barrel roll off this bike. The bike doesn't complete the entire maneuver. So when you go completely ass over tea kettle, the bike forces itself back right it's possible that whoever in the rotorcraft who's trying to take over the bike finally gains control at that point. You and Dante end up essentially rolling on the ground. The bike stops 3 meters away, comes to a complete stop.
Fuck. She was hoping it would go farther.
And as you come to, as you get to your feet and try to sort out what's going on, that floodlight is descending brighter and brighter on top of you.
Make like a lever. She is off into the trees, if possible.
Okay. So Ku is a fairly jungle planet, so there are trees nearby. You run for the trees, and you're able to climb into them. You realize very quickly thereafter that with your fast reaction and getting into the canopy spaces that are nearby some of these residential buildings, Dante's not able to do that, physically not able to do that.
Fuck him.
That rotorcraft light gets closer and closer, and you hear from an outboard speaker on it, "Put your hands up, lie down on the ground." You watch Dante get down on his knees.
And Icarus, she knows that they're going to want to know who she is. And Dante's probably going to resist telling them and get hurt in the process, and they're going to find out who she is anyway. So she really doesn't want to come down and put her hands up and get down next to Dante, but it's inevitable. So she does it, and she looks at him and says, "I should never have helped you when that asshole in first grade kicked your ass."
He looks over from where he's at on the street and says, "I'm really sorry. I'll find a way to get us out of this." The rotorcraft lands, and as it does, a couple of taller gentlemen get out. They're dressed in light combat armor. They don't have helmets on, but they have a fairly Zenithian vibe. So they're likely connected either with the Legion or perhaps one of the Legion's any number of their additional factions that help them, like the Consortium. The man steps over and he raises a pad, and you hear a conversation begin. And this is the snippet of the conversation you get. "Yep, I'm here." "Mm-hmm. Really? Well, we're perfectly fine with that. Thank you for your donation." He sort of puts the pad away in his jacket. "Icarus, is it?"
"Yes, Sayedi."
"Come with me, please."
"What about my friend?"
"Oh, the bike looks unharmed, so he's free to go."
"Then I'm happy to follow you, Cydia."
He extends a hand towards the rotorcraft.
She follows.
He gets into the rotorcraft with you and sort of sandwiches you between another man that's in the rotorcraft. He looks like he's probably a gunner, and the craft slowly begins to ascend into the night sky. The gentleman turns to you and says, "Someone bought your bounty."
"That fast, Cydia."
"That fast."
"I was set up.
"It happens to the best of us."
I'm gonna kill him."
The rotorcraft continues into the night sky as you and it make your way towards the monolith. And that is where we'll leave Icarus this evening. So I want to thank Rosie for letting us learn and experience who Icarus is, at least a little bit. And we look forward to our first full cast episode of Children of the Periphery for the Old Ways podcast. Thank you so much.